The millionaire entered an arranged marriage, believing she was unattractive until the truth shocked him. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. Rain drifted down in thin silver lines over downtown Chicago, tapping softly against the glass walls of the 42nd floor conference room where Ethan Marshall stood alone. He was a man used to commanding empires, not emotions. The city lights shimmered beneath him like scattered diamonds, but his mind was miles away, replaying the board's ultimatum from an hour earlier. Stability, Ethan. You need a wife, a committed image. Otherwise, the shareholders will vote you out. Their words hung in his ears with the same cold weight as the marble floor beneath his shoes. He had built Marshall Dynamics from the ground up. He had survived hostile takeovers, economic collapses, and scandals he did not even cause. But nothing prepared him for this. A marriage decided by corporate fear. A folder lay open on the table filled with profiles the board had selected. Every page felt like a negotiation sheet rather than a person. Then he saw her file. Claire Bennett, age 28, elementary art teacher. No scandals, no family wealth, no media presence. A woman described by one board member as polite, modest, and entirely unremarkable. Another executive had murmured, "At least she will not attract attention. She looks plain enough." Ethan remembered nodding, not out of cruelty, but exhaustion. The company was collapsing under rumors, and the quickest solution was an arranged marriage that looked respectable. Claire's picture was small, washed out, almost clinical. Her hair pulled back, no makeup, a shy smile that seemed to fade before it reached her eyes. The file painted her as simple, quiet, almost invisible in a world obsessed with spectacle. He sighed. If this is what it takes to keep the company alive, then so be it. The decision felt like a transaction, nothing more. Ink on paper. A lifeline for a legacy he could not allow to crumble. He signed the agreement the board drafted, sealing his future with a woman he had never met. Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline. Ethan closed the folder and picked up his coat just as his phone buzzed. It was a message from his legal team. Her family agreed, meeting arranged for tomorrow evening. He stared at the words for a long moment. Somewhere in Chicago, a woman he only knew through a poorly lit photograph had just agreed to step into a life of cameras, contracts, and expectations far heavier than she realized. The elevator carried him down through the building in silence. As the doors opened into the lobby, the scent of rain and polished stone greeted him. Employees whispered as he passed, unaware of the decision that would soon shake the entire company. Outside, the cold evening air wrapped around him. He stepped into the waiting black sedan, the leather seat cool under his palms. The driver adjusted the mirror. "Home, Mr. Marshall?" Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Yes, home. But even as the car pulled into traffic, his mind kept flickering back to the faded photograph, to the quiet smile that seemed to belong to someone who had never asked for this, to the thought that in less than 24 hours he would look into the eyes of a woman he believed was chosen precisely because she would not stand out. He had no idea how wrong he was, and he had no idea how much the truth would change him. The next day arrived with a heavy gray sky hanging over Chicago, thick with the scent of wet pavement and late autumn wind. Claire Bennett stood outside Lakeshore Community School, clutching a folder of lesson materials against her chest as children spilled out through the front doors, rushing toward their waiting parents. Her smile remained warm, steady, and gentle as she waved goodbye to each of them. But the moment the last child left, that smile faded. The school board had just informed her that her contract would not be renewed next semester due to budget cuts. She had already been juggling 2 part-time jobs to support her younger sister's medical bills. The debts piled up faster than she could breathe. Even with her careful budgeting, she knew she was only a few months away from losing the small rental home they shared. She pulled her coat tighter and exhaled slowly. For most people, the thought of marrying a billionaire CEO would feel like a fantasy. For Claire, it felt like a lifeline wrapped in iron chains. Her family needed stability, her sister needed treatments, and the Marshall legal team had not hidden anything from her. The marriage was contractual, public-facing, and temporary. 1 year, appearances only, no emotional obligations. The compensation, however, would save her family completely. She remembered the moment her mother squeezed her trembling hands the night before, whispering, "Claire, sometimes survival requires doing what the heart does not want. You are stronger than you think," Claire had cried quietly afterward, not because she feared the contract, but because she feared losing herself in the process. By 6 o'clock sharp, she arrived at Brookswood Cafe, a quiet, upscale restaurant chosen by Ethan's attorneys. The place smelled faintly of roasted coffee beans and rain-soaked coats. Candlelight flickered across polished tables, casting soft reflections across the room. Claire sat alone near the window, smoothing the same strand of hair behind her ear for the 3rd time. She wondered what Ethan Marshall was really like beyond the fearsome image the media painted. She wondered what he thought of her file, the one that barely captured her real life. She wondered if he had already judged her as plain the way the board had. She did not have to wonder for long. The glass door opened, and Ethan stepped inside. Tall and composed, the warm golden lights catching the sharp lines of his charcoal coat. For a moment, Claire forgot how to breathe. He looked nothing like the stiff corporate portraits she had searched online the night before. In person, he seemed less like a titan of industry and more like a man carrying storms behind his eyes. He saw her immediately. She rose to greet him, offering a polite smile. "Mr. Marshall," she said softly. "Miss Bennett," he replied, his voice low, steady, carefully neutral. He extended his hand. She placed hers in it lightly, and he noticed the faint trembling of her fingers. The waiter led them to a private corner. They sat across from each other, the quiet hum of the cafe filling the space between them. For several long seconds, neither spoke. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "I want to be honest with you from the beginning," he said. "This arrangement is not romantic. It is strategic. There will be expectations, public events, media appearances, a consistent image. You will be placed under pressure you did not ask for." Claire nodded. "Your team explained everything." "I understand the terms." He studied her carefully. "I need someone who can maintain composure when the spotlight is on. Someone the board will not question. Someone discreet." His gaze lowered briefly, as if he remembered the board's words. "They believe you are appropriate for this." Claire's heart ached at the phrasing, but she kept her voice even. "I know what they think of me. It is all right." He paused, taken aback by her calm acceptance. "My priority," she continued, "is to help my family. Your offer can do that. So yes, Mr. Marshall, I am prepared to follow the agreement if you are." Her honesty disarmed him far more than he expected. She did not try to charm him. She did not pretend. She simply stated her truth with quiet dignity. Ethan nodded slowly, his voice softer when he spoke again. "Then let us discuss the terms together." The waiter brought water. Ethan opened the folder of documents and slid it across the table. Claire read every line with careful focus, the candlelight dancing along the edges of the pages. When she looked up again, her expression held both fear and resolve. "I agree," she said. He slid a pen toward her. She hesitated only once, thinking of her sister, of overdue bills, of nights spent worrying if tomorrow would collapse beneath her. Then she signed her name with steady strokes. Ethan added his signature underneath hers. For a moment, they simply sat there, two strangers bound by ink and necessity, each carrying more weight than the other could yet see. When Ethan finally spoke, His voice held a hint of something almost human beneath the corporate steel. "Thank you, Claire. We will handle the rest together." Outside, the rain had returned, tapping softly against the window beside them. Neither of them knew that this fragile agreement, born from pressure and desperation, would unravel far more truths than either of them expected. The morning after Claire signed the agreement, Chicago greeted her with a pale blue sky and a chill that drifted through the early winter air. She woke early, long before her alarm rang, her mind replaying the moment her pen touched the contract. The decision still felt unreal, like a story she had stepped into without fully understanding the ending. By 9:58, she stood inside the marble lobby of Marshall Dynamics, the headquarters she had only ever seen on the news. Everything sparkled under the high ceiling lights, polished floors, glass walls, chrome fixtures. People in tailored suits moved with purpose, their voices low and efficient. Claire felt small in her modest coat, carrying a simple tote bag rather than a designer purse. The receptionist offered a polite nod. "Good morning, Miss Bennett. Mr. Marshall is expecting you. Top floor." Claire stepped into the elevator. The doors closed with a soft chime. Her reflection in the mirrored walls looked composed, but her pulse was unsteady. By the time the elevator reached the top, her palms had grown warm with nerves. When the doors slid open, Ethan's assistant, an elegant woman in a navy skirt, waited for her. "This way. Miss Bennett. Mr. Marshall is ready to begin the process." Claire followed her into Ethan's office, a vast room with floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Chicago skyline. Ethan stood near his desk, reviewing documents. He looked up when she entered, offering a brief but respectful nod. "Claire," he said, "good morning. I appreciate your punctuality." "Good morning, Mr. Marshall," she replied softly. He gestured toward a small seating area. "We have a few steps to complete today: legal paperwork, public announcements drafted by the communications team, a schedule of events. It may feel overwhelming at first, but I promise to guide you through it." There was something different in his voice. Not warmth exactly, but consideration. Claire noticed how tired his eyes looked, as if he had carried too many burdens for too long. They spent the next hour reviewing documents together. Claire signed the final legal forms, confirming the marriage would take place that evening in a private courthouse ceremony. The attorneys explained confidentiality rules, public protocol, and the expectations placed on both parties. Then came the wardrobe department. 2 stylists entered with garment bags and shoeboxes. Claire blinked in surprise as they unveiled dresses in soft ivory, cream, and champagne. Ethan observed quietly, his expression unreadable. "You may choose whichever makes you comfortable," he said. She ran her fingers across the fabric. Everything felt too elegant, too expensive, too far from the world she knew. She finally selected a simple pearl-colored dress. The stylists smiled approvingly and left to prepare it. When the door closed, Claire looked at Ethan. "This is a lot to take in," she admitted. Her voice remained steady, but her heart trembled. "I know," Ethan responded gently. "This world can be cold. I will do my best to shield you from unnecessary pressure." She studied him for a moment, surprised by the sincerity in his tone. For the first time since they met, he did not seem like the billionaire titan the media portrayed. He seemed human. As the afternoon sun shifted across the office floor, Ethan handed her one final folder. "This contains the ceremony details," he said. "It will be quick, legal, efficient." Claire nodded slowly. "I understand." But as she held the folder close, she felt the weight of everything it represented. In a matter of hours, she would become Claire Marshall, wife of a man she barely knew, bound by a contract that felt both like salvation and sacrifice. Ethan watched her quietly. "We will take this one step at a time," he said. "You are not alone in this." But neither of them realized how deeply those words would echo in the days to come. By early evening, the sky over Chicago had turned a muted gray, the clouds hanging low as a thin mist settled across the city streets. Claire stood in front of the full-length mirror inside a quiet dressing room of the courthouse, her hands clasped together as she tried to calm her own breathing. The pearl-colored dress draped gently over her frame, simple yet elegant. It was nothing like the elaborate gowns she had seen in magazines, but it felt right, soft, and unpretentious, just like her. The stylist finished adjusting the small hairpin above her ear. "You look beautiful, Miss Bennett," she said with a warm smile before stepping out and leaving Claire alone. For a moment, the silence pressed in around her. She stared at her reflection, wondering how life had shifted so suddenly. Yesterday, she had been an art teacher fighting against overdue bills and uncertainty. Today, she was minutes away from marrying one of the most powerful men in Chicago. The door opened gently. "Claire?" Ethan's voice was low, respectful. She turned. Ethan stood in the doorway wearing a tailored charcoal suit. The dim light caught the silver edges of his cufflinks. His expression softened briefly when his eyes met hers. "You look," he paused, searching for words that felt appropriate. "You look ready." Claire offered a small, nervous smile. "I hope so." He extended his arm. "Shall we?" She nodded and took his arm, feeling the quiet steadiness in his posture as they walked together down the courthouse hallway. Their footsteps echoed faintly along the polished floor, blending with the distant hum of the building's heating system. Inside the small ceremony room, a judge in his 60s stood behind a wooden podium, flipping through documents with practiced ease. Ethan's attorney and a legal witness waited silently nearby. There were no flowers, no music, no family, no guests, just ink, paper, and the weight of an agreement neither of them could walk away from now. The judge looked up. "Are both parties ready?" Ethan answered first. "Yes." Claire breathed in slowly. "Yes, Your Honor." The ceremony began with calm formality. The judge read their names, the legal terms, and the confirmation that both parties entered the marriage willingly. His voice filled the small room with a solemn rhythm that felt almost unreal. "Do you, Ethan Marshall, take this woman, Claire Bennett, to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. "I do. And do you, Claire Bennett, take this man, Ethan Marshall, to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Claire hesitated for only a single heartbeat, then lifted her chin. "I do." The judge stamped the marriage certificate, his pen sliding across the paper with a final flourish. "Congratulations. You are now legally married." The attorney stepped forward to collect the documents. Ethan turned to Claire, extending his hand. "Mrs. Marshall," he said softly. "Thank you." She placed her hand in his, feeling its steady warmth. "You are welcome." Outside, the mist had turned into a delicate drizzle. A black sedan waited at the curb, the headlights cutting through the gentle rain. As they stepped in, the driver closed the door quietly behind them. The car moved through the evening traffic, the city lights blurring into streaks of gold and white across the windows. Claire sat with her hands folded in her lap, the new ring on her finger catching the dim interior light. She glanced at Ethan, who stared ahead with a thoughtful, unreadable expression. Finally, he said, "We will arrive at the Marshall residence shortly. I know this has been overwhelming. I will make sure you have the space you need." Claire nodded softly. "Thank you, Ethan." The car continued north toward the gated estate awaiting them, its stone columns rising like silent guardians in the falling rain. They had entered this marriage as strangers bound by necessity, but neither of them realized how deeply this night would reshape both of their lives. The sedan rolled up the long, winding driveway toward the Marshall estate, its tires whispering over the damp stone as rain continued to fall in soft, steady lines. Claire leaned slightly toward the window, her breath catching as the mansion came into view. It rose from the mist like something carved out of white stone and quiet power. Tall columns framed the entrance, and warm golden light spilled from the high windows, reflecting across the wet pavement. Ethan stepped out first when the car pulled to a stop. A uniformed chauffeur opened Claire's door and held an umbrella as she followed Ethan up the steps. The air smelled of jasmine from the gardens and polished wood drifting from inside the foyer. As the massive front doors opened, Claire paused for a moment. The interior was breathtaking. The foyer stretched upward into a vaulted ceiling, with a crystal chandelier casting soft light over floors so polished they mirrored the room like water. Paintings lined the walls, each one framed in gold, each one a silent reminder of the Marshall family legacy. A housekeeper approached with a polite nod. "Welcome home, Mrs. Marshall. Your room has been prepared." Claire blinked. "My room?" Ethan turned toward her. "Yes. You will have your own suite. It is down the hall from mine. We will maintain separate quarters, as agreed." There was no coldness in his tone, only clarity. The arrangement was still a contract, after all. The housekeeper led Claire up the grand staircase and into a spacious bedroom overlooking the gardens. The room was softly lit, furnished in creams and pale blues. A vase of fresh white lilies stood on the dresser. A folded note rested on the bedside table. The foyer stretched upward into a vaulted ceiling, with a crystal chandelier casting soft light over floors so polished they mirrored the room like water. Paintings lined the walls, each one framed in gold, each one a silent reminder of the Marshall family legacy. A housekeeper approached with a polite nod. "Welcome home, Mrs. Marshall. Your room has been prepared." Claire blinked. "My room?" Ethan turned toward her. "Yes. You will have your own suite. It is down the hall from mine. We will maintain separate quarters, as agreed." There was no coldness in his tone, only clarity. The arrangement was still a contract, after all. The housekeeper led Claire up the grand staircase and into a spacious bedroom overlooking the gardens. The room was softly lit, furnished in creams and pale blues. A vase of fresh white lilies stood on the dresser. A folded note rested on the bedside table. Claire considered it, then offered a small, sincere smile. "I will join you." His eyebrows lifted slightly, as if he had not expected that answer. "Very well. I will see you in the dining room." He stepped away, his footsteps echoing softly down the corridor until they disappeared into the quiet of the mansion. Claire closed her door and walked back into her room. She noticed the note again and picked it up. The handwriting was neat and elegant. "Welcome. You are safe here." There was no signature, but she knew it was Ethan. The simple message warmed something inside her chest, a small spark of reassurance in a world suddenly unfamiliar. As the clock approached 7, Claire changed into a soft cream blouse and black skirt. She took a deep breath, steadying herself before stepping out into the hallway. The mansion felt even larger at night. Gentle lighting guided her down the grand staircase and toward the dining room. When she entered, Ethan stood at the far end of the long table, the warm glow from the sconces outlining his silhouette. A place was set for her beside him, not across from him. He looked up as she approached. "Claire," he said softly. "Thank you for coming." The moment felt subtle, but meaningful. Two strangers, bound by a contract, sharing their first quiet meal as husband and wife, yet still trying to understand the person sitting beside them. Neither of them realized how much tonight would shift the distance between them. The dining room felt far larger than Claire expected, with high ceilings, soft lighting, and a long mahogany table that could easily seat 20 guests. Yet only 2 places had been prepared, side by side, near the head of the table. A delicate arrangement of white roses sat between them, their fragrance blending with the warm scent of roasted vegetables and freshly baked bread. Ethan stood when she entered, a gesture so subtle yet unexpectedly courteous that Claire felt her heartbeat rise just a little. "Good evening," he said, pulling out her chair. "Good evening," she replied, smoothing her skirt as she sat. The chef and 2 servers moved quietly around them, serving plates with practiced precision. Claire felt a nervous tremor in her hands but kept them folded neatly in her lap. Everything about the room, the food, the environment, felt foreign to her. Yet Ethan's presence remained unexpectedly calm, almost grounding. For a few moments, they ate in silence. Ethan was the first to speak. "If anything on the menu is not to your liking, please tell me. The staff can prepare something else." Claire shook her head gently. "Everything looks wonderful. Thank you." He nodded, though a hint of uncertainty crossed his expression. It was the first time she saw anything in him that resembled vulnerability. After another quiet moment, Ethan cleared his throat. I know the agreement outlines public appearances, but we should also try to establish some level of comfort at home. If we do not know each other at all, the transition will feel more difficult. Claire looked at him, surprised by the honesty in his voice. I agree. I think it will help. He set down his fork and turned slightly toward her. Then tell me something about you that is not in the file. She hesitated. There is not much to tell. That is not true, Ethan said gently. Files never tell the truth about a person. They present facts, not character. Claire considered this, then allowed a small breath to escape. I like to paint, she said quietly. I used to do it all the time before life became complicated. Ethan's eyes softened. You paint? That is something the board did not mention. They would not consider it important, she replied with a faint smile. I would, he said. The words hung in the air, warm and unexpectedly sincere. Claire looked down, unsure how to respond. Ethan took a sip of water, then continued. I used to draw when I was younger. My father did not approve. He believed creativity distracted from responsibility. So I stopped. Claire lifted her eyes, meeting his. Do you miss it? Ethan paused as though no one had asked him that question in years. Sometimes, he admitted, but I buried it a long time ago. Something inside, Claire softened at the quiet confession. She realized there was far more to Ethan than his controlled demeanor and business reputation. He was a man who had given up pieces of himself to carry the weight of an empire. The servers quietly cleared the first course. The warm light reflected off the polished table and shimmered across the small gap between them, filling the moment with a subtle intimacy neither of them intended. So, Ethan said, his tone lighter, what made you choose teaching? Claire folded her hands, thinking. I wanted children to believe in themselves. I wanted them to know that their voices mattered, their thoughts mattered, their feelings mattered. I wanted to give them something I never really had. Ethan watched her closely. You speak with conviction. She nodded. Because the world can be harsh. Children deserve gentleness before they grow into it. Ethan leaned back slightly, studying her with a quiet reverence she did not expect. You are much stronger than the file suggested. Claire looked down, her cheeks warming. The file was not flattering. The file was wrong, Ethan said firmly. The room fell still. For the first time, Claire sensed something shifting inside him, something stirring beneath the surface of their arrangement. He was seeing her, not the version crafted by the board, not the simple, plain choice, but the woman she truly was. The servers returned with a light dessert, placing delicate plates in front of them. Claire took a small bite, the sweetness melting softly on her tongue. Ethan watched her reaction with a hint of amusement. Good? She nodded. Very. He allowed himself a small smile, the first she had seen from him that felt completely unguarded. When the meal ended, Ethan stood and walked her to the staircase. They paused at the landing, the soft glow from the chandelier casting warm light over them. Thank you for sharing dinner with me, he said quietly. Thank you for inviting me, she replied. There was a brief moment, barely a breath, where neither of them moved, neither of them spoke, yet everything between them felt different, softened, human. Ethan finally stepped back. Good night, Claire. Good night, Ethan. She returned to her room, her heart unexpectedly full, unsure why something so small felt so significant. And Ethan remained at the foot of the stairs for a long moment, staring at the space where she had stood, wondering why the silence she left behind felt warmer than the room itself. The next morning arrived quietly at the Marshall estate. Soft sunlight drifted through Claire's window, painting pale gold lines across the carpet. She dressed simply, tying her hair back before stepping into the hallway. The house was still, the kind of stillness that felt almost sacred. She wondered if Ethan was awake or if he worked late into the night the way powerful men often did. When she reached the kitchen, she paused. Ethan sat at the small breakfast table near the window, sipping coffee and reading through a stack of documents. He looked up when he sensed her presence. "Good morning, Claire," he said, his tone warm in a way he did not seem to realize. "Good morning," she answered, taking a seat across from him. A housekeeper brought her a cup of tea and a plate of toast. For a few quiet moments, they ate without speaking, the easy silence feeling strangely natural. Ethan set down his coffee. "There is something I need to prepare you for. We have a corporate gala tonight. The board will be present, along with the shareholders. It will be your first public appearance as my wife." Claire's stomach tightened. "I understand. I will be ready." Ethan studied her carefully. "If anyone makes you uncomfortable, you tell me. You do not have to handle everything alone." She nodded, though something inside her stirred. She wondered why his concern sounded genuine when their agreement said nothing about care or emotional protection. By late afternoon, stylists arrived once again, bringing gowns, shoes, and jewelry cases. Claire stood patiently as they draped fabrics across her shoulders and pinned her hair into soft waves. When they stepped back, she hardly recognized herself. The midnight blue gown shimmered under the light, the fitted silhouette elegant without being overwhelming. When she walked down the grand staircase, Ethan stood waiting at the bottom. He looked up, and for a moment, he forgot how to speak. His posture straightened, his breath paused ever so slightly. "Claire," he said quietly, "you look extraordinary." Her cheeks warmed. "Thank you." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" She placed her hand in his, and they walked together toward the waiting car. The gala hall was enormous, filled with crystal chandeliers and guests dressed in glittering gowns and sharp suits. Reporters lined the entrance, cameras flashing like lightning. As soon as Ethan and Claire stepped onto the carpet, voices erupted. "Mr. Marshall, is this your new wife? Mrs. Marshall, how did you two meet? Is this marriage real or strategic?" Ethan tightened his hold on her arm, shielding her from the aggressive crowd as they moved forward. Inside the main hall, the board members approached. Ethan introduced Claire with polite formality, but not warmth. She noticed the shift instantly. The softness he had shown her the night before disappeared, replaced by the distant professionalism he wore like armor. One board member leaned close and whispered, "You chose her? She seems simple." Claire felt the sting immediately. Another smiled stiffly. "Well, at least she will not distract from company matters." Ethan said nothing. He remained still, expression unreadable. Claire waited for him to defend her, even with a single sentence, but he remained silent. Something inside her faltered. She forced a smile, responding with grace to the board's dismissive remarks, but the hurt settled deep. She realized that to these people, she was not a partner. She was a placeholder, a piece on the board, a convenient role to stabilize Ethan's image. When the board walked away, Ethan finally turned to her. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. Claire looked into his eyes, searching for the man who had listened to her over dinner, the man who had said the file was wrong. But all she saw now was distance, restraint, fear of vulnerability. "I am fine," she replied quietly. She stepped away before he could say anything else, disappearing into the crowd, leaving Ethan standing alone beneath the golden lights, wondering why the air suddenly felt colder than the room around him. Claire slipped through the crowd, her heels tapping softly against the marble floor as she searched for a moment of quiet. The champagne-colored lights blurred around her, voices blending into a distant hum. She stepped out onto a small balcony overlooking the Chicago skyline, her hands tightening around the railing as cold air brushed against her skin. Inside the gala hall, Ethan realized she was gone. He excused himself from a conversation with the board and scanned the room with growing unease. Something inside him twisted with regret. He replayed the moment the board mocked her and how he had stayed silent. He had told himself it was professionalism, that defending her publicly might create more attention, more rumors. But the truth was simpler. He had been afraid to show that she mattered. He found the balcony door slightly ajar. Claire stood alone, framed by the glow of the city lights. Her shoulders curved inward, as if she were trying to make herself smaller. Claire, he said softly as he stepped outside. She did not turn. You should be inside with your colleagues. I would rather be here, he replied. She closed her eyes. They do not respect me, Ethan. They looked at me like I was a mistake. They were wrong, he said, his voice steady. They were cruel and short-sighted. Claire finally turned to face him. Yet you said nothing. The words hit him with more force than any corporate blow ever had. He swallowed, his chest tightening. You are right, he admitted. I hesitated. I was thinking like a businessman, not a husband. I was thinking about the board, the company, the investors. I forgot that you were standing beside me, carrying weight you never asked for. Claire looked down, her voice trembling. I felt alone. Ethan stepped closer, his expression filled with something raw and unguarded. You are not alone. Not anymore. I am sorry, Claire. I should have defended you. I should have protected you from the very people who doubted you. She studied him, unsure whether to trust the emotion in his voice. Why are you saying this now? Because tonight I realized something, Ethan said. This marriage may have started as a contract, but you are not a contract to me. You are a person I respect, a person I admire, someone who shows more strength in one evening than most executives show in their entire careers. Claire felt her heartbeat shift, though her voice remained soft. Ethan. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I had this made after our dinner. I was going to give it to you privately later, but it feels right to give it to you now. He opened the box. Inside lay a simple but beautifully crafted ring, elegant in a way that matched her entirely. This is not part of the agreement, he said quietly. This is not a requirement. This is a gesture of respect and an apology. Claire stared at the ring, then at him. Why would you do this? Because you deserve something real, Ethan replied. Something that acknowledges who you are, not what the board believed you to be. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The cold air circled them, but the distance between them felt warmer than it ever had inside the mansion. If you allow me, Ethan said, I want to rebuild this marriage on honesty, not obligation. I want to stand beside you, not just for the cameras, but for the person you are. Claire felt tears rise in her eyes, soft and unbidden. She lifted her hand slowly. Ethan slid the new ring onto her finger, the gesture gentle, almost reverent. She whispered, Thank you, Ethan. He exhaled, relief washing through him. No more silence, no more distance. I choose to be your partner for real. Claire nodded, her voice steady despite the emotion in her chest. Then, let us take this one step at a time. They stood together on the balcony, the city stretching endlessly before them. For the first time since the contract began, Claire did not feel like a placeholder. She felt seen, she felt chosen, and Ethan, for the first time in years, felt something stronger than duty. He felt hope. The car ride home from the gala was quiet, but not in the way silence had filled the space between them before. This time, it carried a sense of understanding, a calm that settled gently between Claire and Ethan as the city lights faded behind them. Claire traced her fingers over the new ring resting on her hand, its weight subtle yet meaningful. Ethan glanced at her. If anything tonight made you doubt yourself, I want you to forget those voices. The board does not see you, Claire. But I do. His voice held no formality, no distance, only truth. Claire let the words settle inside her heart like warm sunlight breaking through clouds. When they reached the estate, the rain had stopped. The driveway glistened under the soft glow of the outdoor lanterns. They walked together through the front doors, their steps echoing across the polished floor. For the first time, the mansion did not feel cold to Claire. It felt like something was shifting within its walls, quiet and steady. Ethan paused near the staircase. Claire, he said, may I show you something? It is small, but I want you to see it. She nodded, curious. He led her down a hallway she had not explored before. At the end of it was a room with a glass door. When Ethan pushed it open, she gasped softly. It was a studio, empty canvases lined the walls, paintbrushes arranged neatly on a long wooden table, jars of pigment resting beside them. Sunlight from earlier that day had dried in streaks across the floor to ceiling windows, forming soft patterns in the dim light. Claire whispered, "What is this?" Ethan stepped beside her. "A place for you. For your art. For whatever pieces of yourself you thought you had to give up." Her eyes softened, emotions swelling within her chest. "You did this? For me?" "Yes," he said simply. "You told me painting once brought you joy. I want you to have that again. You deserve more than survival. You deserve space to breathe." Claire walked into the room, touching the edge of a blank canvas. She felt her throat tighten with a mix of disbelief and gratitude. No one had ever created a space just for her before. No one had ever looked at her life and said, "Your dreams matter." When she turned back to Ethan, he met her gaze with a softness she had never seen from him. "There is something else," he said quietly. "I want us to end the contract." Her eyes widened. "End it?" "Yes," he said. "On paper, legally. I do not want our marriage to be an agreement anymore. I want it to be a choice. Your choice. And mine." Claire felt her heart race. "Ethan, are you sure?" He stepped closer, taking her hand gently in his. "I am very sure, but I will not pressure you. If you want time, you can have it. If you want distance, I will respect it. But I want you to know the truth. I want to build something real with you." The room fell silent, as if holding its breath for her response. Claire squeezed his hand. "Then let us try. Not because we have to, but because we want to." A slow, relieved smile spread across Ethan's face, one that softened the lines of responsibility that usually weighed on him. "Then we start today," he said. They stood together in the studio, surrounded by blank canvases waiting to be filled. Claire felt something she had not felt in a long time: possibility. A future that was not dictated by contracts, fear, or survival, but by trust. Ethan looked at her with gentle certainty. "Whatever happens next, we will build it together." And for the first time since she had stepped into the world of millionaires and boardrooms and expectations, Claire believed him. The marriage that had begun as a necessity was becoming something neither of them had anticipated. A partnership, a choice, a real beginning,